Well, hello again. It's good to be with you in another one of these teaching videos. So far in this series, we've been reviewing our mission, vision, and core values statements. And then we moved on to take a look at our ministry framework, which is made up of 4 elements: our weekend worship, our small community group ministry, our growth track or discipleship ministry, and then our ministry teams. And this week, we want to focus on some ministry priorities that are associated with this revitalization process. Now, one of the resources that I've used several times over the course of my ministry has been a church consultant. Now, these are people, many times they are former pastors, who have a real heart and passion for the local church. Now, they've stepped away from the day-to-day operations of running a congregation so that they can help church pastors and church leaders in doing the same and making more churches effective. I mean, that's ultimately the purpose behind their ministry. And oftentimes these are folks who have had a lot of experience themselves, but they've learned, they've studied what it means to do effective ministry in the 21st century, and then they share that with other church leaders. Now, as pastors, if truth be told, we basically focus on the tree, right? The local congregation where we are called to serve. That gets the majority of our time, effort, energy, prayer, so forth, and rightly so. But church consultants focus on the forest, not just an individual tree or two. So they see the bigger picture. They have a broader perspective. They see some common patterns and understand best practices that go across denominational lines and across certain regions and areas. And then they are able to share those things effectively with church leaders. Now, a few years ago, when I was serving at the church in Kalamazoo, we utilized the services of a church consultant named Daryl Kripe. Now, he had worked in a variety of different church settings and with different denominations, but he had a real heart for smaller churches that were involved in revitalization. And he was very familiar. He had served and worked with churches in the Reformed and Christian Reformed denominations. So we felt he would be a very good fit for us. And I believe his learnings would also be a good fit for this congregation here in Nashville as well. And so one of the tools that he provided us with was a list of priorities that church leaders need to focus on if they are really going to be serious about renewing and revitalizing their congregation. And he told me that I could share that information with other churches as well. And so I took that here, and together as a church council here at Faith, we studied that list of priorities, and then we adjusted it for our setting here. In addition, I added further information that had been gleaned from my own experience, as well as those who have also gone down this revitalization road before. And so these are folks who have learned that that for a large percentage of churches that are in plateau or in decline, that they display some predictable patterns, predictable behaviors, that there are predictable areas of ministry that need to be addressed in a church that is seriously plateaued or in decline. In other words, there are certain common traits or issues that need to be addressed for these kinds of churches. And they need to be addressed in order to get that church healthy and growing again. And so in other words, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and figure this all out ourselves, why not learn from those who've been down this road before? And so today I want to share with you this list that we have developed. It's a list of ministry areas that the council is going to be working on and tackling over the coming year. And I want to share this list by means of a screen share. So let me pull this up for us. And there's a list like of 6 things here, 6 priorities. The first one is organizational agreement and alignment for doubling and for kind of church growth, helping our church to reach new people. But you see, there needs to be organizational alignment and agreement. That is, our church leaders are leading both personally and corporately, that is communally, toward intentional evangelistic and discipleship growth. In other words, the church leaders have come together and we're kind of rowing, all rowing together in the same direction. And that's one of the things that we've been doing, sort of behind the scenes with all of our Zoom meetings over the last months. We've been becoming more intentional about evangelism and discipleship and what that might look like here. There needs to be agreement and alignment amongst the church leaders for a church to move effectively forward. We all can't be pulling in different directions. The church leadership needs to be unified around some key ideas. And that's why we've been working on the mission, vision, values, statements, and so forth. Our church leaders are proactively addressing all restrictions that hinder our congregation from living out its biblical mission. So this idea of evangelistic and discipleship growth, that's the Great Commission, right? Both bringing in new people and growing those believers up in the faith. And so we need to proactively address things that might be hindering that process. That's our highest priority, the Great Commission. We are called to be a missional church, a church on mission for Christ. And there are some things that are hindering that process. And so we're going to be addressing those things, correcting them or eliminating them so that we can move forward with this mission. And we're going to be doing that together as a group, as a team of leaders. Right? That's the first priority. And that's what we've been working on this year. Second priority is a white-hot passion for reaching the spiritually lost or the spiritually disconnected. Okay? Now, every church will say that we're here to reach the lost, but not every church has that as a white-hot passion. Okay? And so we want to put that back at the center and say that's where, that's the center linchpin, if you will, of what we're about here. We want to clearly communicate and demonstrate evangelistic focus. Most churches, especially if they start out kind of as a mission church, they have that at the center. But then as the church ages and matures, we can lose that passion. And so we need to regain that passion for reaching those in our community who do not yet know Jesus. We need to develop a culture of invitation with intentional means and opportunities for inviting others, inviting them into our fellowship, inviting them into, a relationship with Jesus. And so we're going to develop a culture of invitation and use some means and some strategies of inviting people. Regular prayer is going to be a focus here. Prayer for the lost. And then helping members identify and reach their one. Maybe that one person God has put into their life that they are called to witness to or to minister to in some way, and to then eventually invite. And so we're going to focus again back on one of those core priorities of evangelism. The third priority is Sunday morning, right? We need to prioritize and develop a great Sunday morning experience. Now, that involves a whole lot of things. One of those is updating our website and our social media sites. After all, the website is now the new front door. Almost very few people will walk into a church for the first time without, first of all, visiting the church's website. So that's our new front door. And we're in the process of redeveloping our website, redesigning it. Next, we want to design an experience on Sunday morning with the D church, those who were part of a church but have kind of wandered away, de-churched and the unchurched in mind. In fact, we are having some revitalization meetings, and one of those meetings is going to be tonight. We're going to be taking a look at worship through the lenses, through the views, through the eyes of the unchurched. what does church look like from those who are not church bros, if you will, from the uninitiated, and then design a church that will, speak to them. Another factor is a guest-centric street-to-street experience. In other words, when people pull off Old Hickory Boulevard and they pull onto our property, from that time on, what messages are we sending to them? What are we communicating to them until they leave our property on Sunday morning? We want to take hospitality and visitor follow-up to a new level by developing better follow-up procedures. Right? Instead of just kind of assuming it's going to happen, we want to be very intentional about that. So when they come here, this is what happens. This is who they meet. This is how they meet. This is how we gather their information. This is how we follow up with them. We invite them the next Sunday. We invite them to this. If they come back, this is what we do. And so we need to develop a system, a follow-up assimilation system, if you will. Next, we want to offer a more energetic, passionate, engaging style of worship. And the council is looking at what that might be for us. And then we want to make children's ministry and their experience a priority, and then seek to raise the quality of music, tech, and preaching so that people will experience a quality, what we're putting out as a quality product, if you will. Now, in all of this, the message doesn't change. It's still the gospel of Jesus Christ that gets proclaimed. But how we do that probably will need to change and be adjusted. And so we want to make the Sunday morning experience a great one for everyone, for those within and those still outside our fellowship. The next priority is a stepped, intentional discipleship process. So it's stepped. In other words, there are clear steps and it's intentional. It's not just willy-nilly or kind of a random approach, buckshot, but it's a very intentional approach. We want an easy, progressive assimilation path for guests to get relationally connected with those within the church. And so that's an assimilation pathway. That's what we were just talking about, visitor follow-up, and how to help people who are new to our community and new to our church to get relationally connected with people here. So we're going to develop an assimilation pathway. One of the things we talked about last time was a hospitality and assimilation ministry team. And we're in the process of forming that team, who will then form this pathway. Next, we need to develop a clear discipleship pathway to help people take next steps in their walk with God, right? Where less is more, not having 101 options, less options, but more quality and more intentionality. And that's what the growth track is all about. So we actually have a model in place. We still have to implement that model, but we have one in place that will help to give us a stepped, intentional discipleship process. So the plan is there, just needs to be implemented. And next, we want to engage most of our members in a small community group and a ministry team, right? Join a group, serve on a team is what we're talking about here. And so in some ways, we've got the foundation of step 4 already in place. We just need to begin to implement that here. That's number 4. Number 5, as far as priorities, is care for our community. Now, one of the things that church consultants, church gurus have discovered is that almost all churches that are plateaued or declining have something in common. There's a weak connection between that church and their community. There's not strong connectional, relational ties between the church and its community. And so we need to build better bridges with our community, caring for our local community by providing regular opportunities to activate our members in mission, right in our local community where we are serving and where we are growing and we are sharing. Because when we're involved in community service kinds of things, that's when we grow. Finding a service project or a social cause that impacts our community and that will activate evangelism and discipleship within our own congregation. So it becomes a mutually beneficial thing when churches are involved, engaged in serving in their community. It helps the church and it helps the community. And one of the things we can do is build stronger bridges with the organizations that are already using our facilities, like Parents Day Out, like HOA meetings, like AA that meets here weekly, and building bridges, getting to know those folks, serving them in some way, and then inviting them. These are people that are already, we have a relationship with, and we can leverage that relationship more effectively as, in the coming months and years. The final priority is our facility. Almost all churches that are plateaued or declined need some sort of facility upgrades. One of the things that we definitely needed was a new sound system, and that now has been installed. So that's been accomplished already. Redecoration of our front entryway, our church lobby, plans for a new street sign. Again, there's a variety of things that we can do that aren't necessarily, huge budget busters, but things that we can do to upgrade our facility in some way. Now, undergirding all of these priorities will be a focused, intentional prayer ministry. We want to increase our prayer opportunities for both council members and congregational members alike. We believe that, this is not something that we can simply do on our own. This is going to take the work of the Holy Spirit, a fresh move of the Spirit in this place. And that's where prayer comes in. We need to be working in partnership with God. After all, this is His church, and this is His ministry, and this is His calling, and we need His power and His energy to do it. And so really those are the priorities. We don't want to, hide this. We really want to share this with the congregation so that you can be involved in this process as well. Now, plans are coming together to work on some of these areas. But again, we're still waiting to implement many of these plans because of the pandemic and kind of the shutdown mode that we are in at the present time. But while we are in the shutdown mode, we can still work on plans that we can begin to implement once we are given the opportunity. Hope that this has been helpful and informative. Blessings until next time.